Russia was the Pope appealing for peace, or was he praying for peace?
And the same applies to the Kaliningrad.
Yeah, that's a good question. So what do you have to say about that, guys? It's not very good, is it? I mean, that's my feeble attempt to update the intro to save views on the news. Anyway, that's what we got. So I'm sorry about that. You'll have to put up with it. Welcome, anybody watching. It's evening here, but you're probably enjoying morning, afternoon, or whatever. And you could be looking at a podcast at your own convenience. That's the nature of the world today. So what we have today is some wonderful guests, including Guy Otten from Manchester. Hi, Guy. Thank you for coming. Dread Pirate Higgs from British Columbia. Thank you for coming, Dread.
Arr.
Ty Wells from Tennessee.
Sure.
Oh, dear.
Nice.
Is that an injury, or are you joining the pirate crew?
He's got his eye patch on. Love it.
Okay. And John Peters from it's the northwest. It's not Washington State. It's
Oregon, yeah.
Oregon, the one below. Yeah. Okay. Welcome. Anyway, great. Well, thanks for coming, guys. So here we go, plunging straight in to the most weird of news shows that I've had. It didn't include any video information, but listen to this. We've just had our second Easter of the year.
What? He has risen again.
I know, yes. so because of course most of us in the Roman Christian purview celebrated Easter on the 9th of April. That was Easter Sunday for us. But for millions of other people around the world, last Sunday, a week today, back a week, the 16th of April was their Easter, Orthodox Christian Easter. Now, you might wonder why this is. So I'm going to go through a rigmarole, and I want you to take notes because I'll be asking questions at the end, see if you've understood. Okay? So these people are in Europe, Africa, and the Middle East, and in Russia, and they use a different calendar to work out what day Easter should fall on. So here we go. Both Orthodox Easter and what you might call Roman Easter Sunday are Christian festivals when believers celebrate the resurrection of Jesus, and it's the most important festival in the Christian calendar. In Eastern Orthodox Christianity, the preparations begin with Great Lent, 40 days of reflection and fasting, which starts on Clean Monday and ends on Lazarus Saturday. Clean Monday refers to believers being cleaned of their sins during Lent, and Lazarus Saturday falls 8 days before Easter Sunday and signifies the end of Great Lent, although the fasting continues into Holy Week. Next comes Palm Sunday, 1 week before Easter, remembering the entry of Jesus Christ into Jerusalem. That's followed by Holy Week, which ends on Easter Sunday. Now, Orthodox churches in some countries, including Greece, Cyprus, and Romania, base their Easter date on the Julian calendar, which was designed by Roman Emperor Julius Caesar in 45 BC, and he based a year on the time it takes, listen to this, the sun to go around the earth. Anything wrong with that?
I can admit that when I was a Christian, I never really relied on an intuition of when Easter was. I always relied on my pastor to tell me what it was.
Yeah.
Yes.
And now I can see it's a lot more complicated, and
Yes.
happy to be out of that situation.
And unnecessarily complicated.
I haven't finished yet
Oh
because
no.
the rest of us go by the Gregorian calendar, which was created by Pope Gregory in 1582 to fix some of the glitches in the Easter date on the Julian calendar.
Mhm.
And that's as a result of astronomy becoming more accurate. But also in the Eastern Orthodox Church, Easter must happen after the Jewish festival of Passover. Because in the Easter story, Jesus celebrates Passover before his death.
That's a really interesting note, because you have this idea that science gets better over time. And so when you glom on to science in its early stages, or in an earlier stage, and say, aha, science said that the earth was flat, therefore we know that God holds it up like this, and that proves everything. And the next thing you know, the scientists come out, it's not flat, it's a round earth model. It's like, okay, it's a round earth model, but we're the center of the universe, right? It's like, we're the center of the universe. It's like, okay, cool. Now we're going to come up with a new religion. We're changing the little flat thing, but here's the new thing. And everyone has this grand procession, and they tout the latest theory by science. And then when science comes up with the new things, like, actually, we're not even the center of the universe. They're like, well, we're not going to change the story now. It's like, well, it wasn't about the story. It was about trying to be as truthful as possible. And it applies to both astrology, the astronomy, and all these other decisions that affect our dates and how we record time and determine when things actually happen. But we're stuck with tradition, and you can see us dragging our feet. It's really interesting.
Tradition gets in the way of the Bayesian approach, right?
Mm.
What puzzles me is all of this contradiction. Out of all of that contradiction and vagueness and changing of dates and everything, nobody questioned the idea that the whole lot might be rubbish.
Right. Yeah. So pastafarians, of course, have Passover. So that's we've rewritten the whole thing on that. So
yes, quite right too. Do you have a date?
Yeah, the 20th of April.
Right, and is it fixed?
Yes.
Good, excellent work.
This points to other problems too, because I mean, it just shows the power of rationalization. There was that backfire study done in 2010, which showed that as you get advanced degrees, sometimes your critical reasoning power doesn't get any better, but your ability to rationalize improves dramatically.
Yes.
And this points to the mess that trying to cram all these books together in a single source, the Bible, to make it all make sense and all the contradictions to go away and stuff. And it's even worse because it turns out that there's at least 4 different Bibles that Christians around the world use with different canons. And so if they can't even decide what goes into the Bible, why would we expect that they would be able to figure all this other stuff out?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah,
it's all a pox on your nonsense, really, isn't it? That's my view.
It does, however, create job security for apologists.
Yes.
But I mean, it's interesting that, I mean, it's obvious that they didn't fix the dates for Christmas and Easter until quite some time after the event, and they didn't know when they should have been held because they've made it all up anyway, and so they just put it on dates that they tried to take over the celebrations of the midwinter and the fertility sort of Easter thing. Now, what I'd like to know is whether the Orthodox fertility festivals, in Russia and places, actually fell on a different date. I don't know.
No, I don't know. Yeah, because that was the goddess Oystra, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it seems to me that a bunch of guys just got together and said, "Isn't it time for a party?"
Yeah.
Anyway, you won't be surprised to hear that the Archbishop of Canterbury has been having a go because he gets to do that at Easter. He gets to preach from his pulpit in Canterbury Cathedral. And he has said some really wise stuff. Listen to this. He said, "True peace is no aimless daydream. It sounds like something you'd find inside a cheap car, doesn't it? You open a car and you find this little homily in there. The resurrection teaches Christians that life triumphs over death, light over darkness. What do you think about that for meaningfulness? Any in there?
It sounds like something Deepak Chopra would say.
Yes, it does. Yes.
Yeah, it's sort of what we might call a deepity.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or a Chopratism.
Yeah. I like to refer to him as deep crap Chopra.
Sounds racist to me.
So let's take a look at what's happening elsewhere, because of course this is a celebration of 25 years of the Good Friday Agreement, which sorted out the troubles in Northern Ireland. You remember the largely religiously labelled troubles that have been burbling on in Ireland since the 1960s, when I think they killed about 4,000 of each other, and it was sorted out 25 years ago on Good Friday of that year. And so today we have a founding member of the Democratic Union Party, which was, as you might guess from their name, strongly in favor of uniting with the rest of the rest of Great Britain, because that adding Ireland in is what turns Great Britain into the United Kingdom. And he says that his back in 1912, this is from history, not from his memory, when home rule was being spoken of, our forefathers believed that home rule would be Rome rule. But, he says, 100 years on, that's completely changed, and secularization has played a big role. So, he's looking at considering a possible united Ireland and is willing to debate that possibility openly and honestly. How about that?
It's brilliant, because as far as I'm concerned, the division of Ireland was a mistake historically. Yeah. And if we can move back to a peaceful reunion of that island, that would be a great achievement, I think.
Mm.
Yeah.
What's particular about this is this guy, Wallace Thompson is his name. He is a DUP special advisor and evangelical Protestant, but he says that we should broaden our base. I'm still a unionist, but my faith is much bigger than that. I'm not quite sure. That's a sort of what's the meaning?
It's something towards the good that's done for the wrong reasons.
I don't know. It's just too dense for me to understand. Or maybe I'm too dense to understand. I don't know what.
No, what he's trying to say is his faith in the future is bigger than simply his commitment to the union of Northern Ireland and Great Britain. And so he's trying to suggest that true Christians could, or Protestants could conceive of something better by joining. That's what I'm reading. And actually they're right, because Southern Ireland is doing better than England.
Wow.
And
that's what I thought. I knew it had to be a money reason. I knew it.
Yep.
Yeah.
It had to be money. No one wants poor people in Christianity.
That's right. So this means, of course, that Jesus is more important than the UK. Now, the person who said many years ago that they were bigger than Jesus and he was one of the Beatles got a hounding, didn't he? So I better not come out against Jesus at all. Right. Looking on to Yemen. They held a charity event for Ramadan at a school, and it involved giving out money because they're starving. This is in Yemen, where there's very little food, and so a merchant was giving out $9 bills or something Is there such a thing? Well, $9 worth of bills. And this caused a stampede, and 78 people were killed.
Wow.
So what's the
That's,
moral of that?
That's a poor organization.
Yeah, there's a way to do that.
Yeah.
So, for example, I volunteer at food drives. A lot of them are Christian-led, but the thing that makes them great is that they operate under very secular logistics, right? There's nothing particularly holy about an assembly line or a process to say, hey, we're going to set up this way. This is the most efficient way to do it. These are your roles. And this is where we'll put the food at. And then we'll have these people come in and we make sure everyone's safe. To just go into a place where people are starving to death and throw out money, you're asking for a problem. You're actually making the situation more dangerous. Even if your intentions are very good, the logistics and the context that you're doing it can cause a safety issue. And you know, kudos to the for us to remind ourselves that is the thing. Like, you know, it sounds counterintuitive, but there's a reason why charities cost money, because there's a lot of logistics that go with how to properly distribute funds and do so in a safe way for everyone.
Yeah. So isn't Ramadan the fasting season? So these people, the Muslim fast, so these people were already starving. So
Right.
this most stupid opportunity to give out money to them.
Yeah.
They're desperate.
Yeah.
I mean, the Ramadan is of course a big time of charity within Islam. I mean, it's the one time when charitable donations rise significantly, and it's their duty, it's a religious duty to do it, particularly at that time. So it's not surprising that they were organizing this kind of relief effort in Yemen.
Yeah. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that, you know, I mean, it's like, you know, giving presents or, you know, honoring somebody with a gift or whatever, is that, you know, we wait until Christmas or their birthday or Mother's Day or Father's Day to do it. When in fact, you know, if you did this at random times throughout the year, you're showing your appreciation for that person or persons all the time, as opposed to waiting for one occasion in which to do it, in which results in these kinds of ridiculous outcomes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, apparently there were crowds of hundreds, and video was taken showing people screaming for help and others trying to pull them free. Now, I didn't access those videos for pretty obvious reasons, I think. We don't want to see that stuff. Moving to Kenya, you'll like this. Police are investigating the deaths of 4 people suspected to have starved to death on the orders of the leader of a controversial cult. He calls himself Pastor Mackenzie Ndhenge, and he told his followers to starve themselves in the hope of getting to heaven quickly.
I mean, it's accurate.
Did it work?
So apparently the police were tipped off and they found 15 seriously ill people. Only 11 made it to hospital alive. So 4 of them died. And there's a mass grave in a nearby forest, apparently. So they got this guy, Pastor Mackenzie Ndhenge, charged him in connection with the deaths of 2 children whose parents had joined his, listen to this, Good News International Church. That's what they joined. That's the name of his cult. So
this is why faith is not a virtue, and to celebrate Abraham and Isaac, you know, knifing your son and then burning his body just because you're hearing voices. You know, those we have different standards now than they did thousands of years ago, hopefully.
Yeah, indeed.
And the craziest thing is, though, there's a litmus test in the Bible where there's a character called the devil whose job is, by God, is to deceive people. And so if that exists, you have to think that nothing can be taken for credit without reasonable investigation. If there's a being set out to deceive you by God.
That's a good
And so
point.
if you have a voice in your head that says, "Hey, I'm God, please kill your son," you can at least say, "Prove it," or "Give me something to work on," because this could just be the deceiver. Like that's within the realm of your own religion to
That's
question.
a really good point.
Yeah, they don't practice that
I
bit.
love it.
Yeah, I wonder also if there's more information that could come out that as these people were starving themselves to death, if the pastor had them bequeath whatever money they had or possessions to him on the way out, and
there's
that
some
would
sort
be
of player.
interesting too.
And
Yeah,
apparently
there's
the pastor wasn't part of that fasting thing.
Well,
No, yeah,
it's-
somebody had to stay behind and organize it, right? Of course,
We
probably
accidentally killed the guy.
yeah,
Anyway,
Yeah.
he's the gatekeeper.
yeah, somebody has to sweep up at the end, don't they? So
Yeah.
they did capture him, and he pleaded not guilty, but they gave him bail. And guess what? The
Uh-oh.
current whereabouts of the pastor are not clear.
I didn't know they did bail in Kenya. That's a. Do they have like? Oh, I mean, they don't even have bail in Kentucky, so that's interesting.
Well, yeah.
It's
Well,
a lot of
I
work.
think Kenya had the good fortune to be colonized by the British, unlike Kentucky.
I mean, there's problems with the bail system, but we don't have to do it in this show. But go ahead.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. So the Good News International Church followers, the police were given information, and they've reported that ignorant citizens were starving to death in pretext to meet Jesus after being brainwashed by a suspect. That's very PC police language, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
This does bring up one thing, and that is, if you really believed that things were better in the afterlife, why not get there sooner? And there was a 2008 study, I think, in JAMA, which went into ICU utilization by believers and non-believers, and it does turn out that people who are believers actually end up using more resources in the ICU to keep themselves from dying.
Right.
So, that's kind of an interesting, at least these people were consistent.
Yes.
The other night I watched Bill Maher's Religulous. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but anyway, he goes into this trucker chapel somewhere in the States, and that's the question he asks these bunch of truckers standing there. He says, "Well, if heaven's so good, why don't you just kill yourself?" So, it kind of stuns them for a second to think, well, yeah, actually, that's a good question. It's like, yeah, seriously.
Yeah, they don't seem to be so keen to get there when they actually think about it.
Yeah.
So I've got another story which is a similar sort of thing. This is here in the UK, in Wales, nearly the UK, isn't it?
Well, Wales is in the UK.
Yeah, I was trying to be Welsh racist.
All right. Oh, God.
I failed, obviously. So anyway, this is a mum name of Olabisi Abu Bakr.
It's Imam or Imam?
A mum.
A mother.
Authoritarian figure in Islam,
No. Wait a minute.
or a mother?
She's a Pentecostal Christian, and
Okay,
yes, a
gotcha.
mother. Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay.
But she's got an Islamic sounding name, isn't she?
Yeah, I was confused.
Yeah, sorry about that. Anyway, she was found in her flat, thin, malnourished, and dehydrated, on a sofa bed alongside her son, Taiwo, who was dead, 3 years old. The little boy weighed just 1 stone 5 pounds, or 9.8 kilos, and had died of malnutrition and dehydration. She denies manslaughter and neglect charges, and the prosecutor told the jury at the Cardiff Crown Court that a friend of Mrs. Abu Bakr raised the alarm when he was unable to contact her. he said police forced open the door of her flat in Cardiff to find this tragic and distressing scene. She had consciously and deliberately neglected Taiwo, the little boy, by failing to provide food and water and by forcing him to fast with her. He also said that she suffered delusions as a result of having paranoid schizophrenia. And there's evidence that she may not have noticed the physical acts. The court heard that she was a Pentecostal Christian who believed fasting was important to her faith. She believed she had been in heaven because she could see relatives who had died and heard angels singing. She said she didn't want to die, and the angels brought her back to life. Mrs. Abu Bakr was described as having been very concerned by the dangers posed by COVID-19 and rarely left her flat.
Wow.
It's tragic. I mean, it sounds like a case of mental illness exacerbated by...
You're frozen.
Oh, dear.
Yes. You took the words right out of my mouth. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
We can, yes.
Yeah. It's a case of mental illness exacerbated by religious fanaticism.
Yeah.
And there is, interestingly, in my experience, a bit of a spectrum between religious fanaticism and mental illness and delusions. It's difficult to know where the line is crossed. Do you know what I mean? From simple religious extremism into sort of religious language schizophrenia.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a blur there. And you're speaking from the point of view of a pastor of a chaplain who visits a mental health institution.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
We also have a retired GP on this show. John, what do you have to say about the blur between mental illness and religion?
Yeah, I think it's well established that, especially with paranoid schizophrenic patients that I had, that there was definitely a correlation with religiosity. And it's there. They tend to, connect patterns that are not real. And just like people who pray and connect patterns. I was thinking about there's a movie that I have the DVD. I haven't watched it for 20 years, about an ex-Catholic priest, I think, who, certainly wasn't anything abnormal, but he would see in the electrical lines that the posts that have the high tension electrical lines, you would see the cross whenever he was driving, and that was a sign to him. So it's just well known that sort of thing goes on with the paranoid schizophrenics all the time, that they can gravitate towards that.
Well, and isn't it the case that the DSM, the Diagnostic Standards Manual, defines delusion as a belief in something that is not consistent with objective reality, and that by definition, those who believe in a God are believing in those things that are not consistent with objective reality. So mental illness, by definition under the DSM, and religiosity are really synonymous. They're the one and the same thing.
Yeah, but it is a bit more complicated than that, I think. Because I think that for some more moderate religious beliefs, they can actually potentially help a person regain their sanity, in certain circumstances. And so I find it difficult to be sort of judgmental in a full sense here.
No, I don't mean to be reductive, but there's certainly a parallel, right?
There's a context, there's a connotation or a baggage that comes with having a mental illness that we need to be comfortable with dealing with first, I think, because if you have a mental illness, it's the same thing with having a cold. You shouldn't be demonized for that. You shouldn't be ostracized for that or made fun of. It's not a punitive thing. It's something that can be fixed. It's something that can be addressed. And so I see religiosity in the same capacity, where if you have this if you have a belief system that is harmful to both you demonstrably and to other people that you care about, and puts you in a position where you could be just like this person who unfortunately let their own child pass away or killed their own kid, that's something that could be addressed with a recognition that you need help, the recognition that there are systems available to help you, and that there are ways out of that kind of thinking. That is, in my head, addressing it as a mental illness and addressing it as a path towards cure.
Exactly, and that's exactly my point.
And we're not making fun of her. We're just saying you're a person that needs help. This is how we can help you, because we classify the issue that you have. That's not a problem.
Where it crosses over is in Oregon. Actually, about 20 years ago, there was a cult in Oregon City, I'm pretty sure, that was withholding medical care from children and themselves. And so, because in America you have this freedom of religion that is protected with religious exemptions to vaccinations and stuff, there's a gray area. And so after a number of children kept dying. In fact, they had a cemetery next to this church that had a whole bunch of children and infants in it, much higher than the surrounding population. And so eventually the prosecutors in Clackamas County had enough, and they actually took the parents to court and were successful in getting these parents to basically say, we're going to take your kids away if you don't start taking type 1 diabetics to the doctor to save their lives. And so it was kind of a landmark shift. But here these people are standing up in front of the court and in front of the public, crying about how much they love their children and stuff, but their faith comes, it's so important. And meanwhile, they're wearing glasses. They can't even cure their myopia, and so so it's I think where it crosses the line is when you start killing children that are under your watch, that the state has to step in.
John, and just to add to that, your use of the word myopia is both literal and figurative, right?
Good point. So you mentioned exemptions, and we've got an item about that very thing, because what you spoke about hasn't apparently reached Arizona. Listen to this. The Arizona Supreme Court has ruled that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints can refuse to answer questions or turn over documents under a state law that exempts religious officials from having to report child sex abuse.
No.
That is horrible.
If they learn of the crime during a confessional session.
And guess what? We need more female representatives in because I can bet you it's a bunch of guys that have some shifty backgrounds who probably passed that through.
Probably, yeah. Well, what's happened is child sex abuse victims have filed a lawsuit that accuses the church, the Mormon church as we know it, and two of its bishops and other church members of conspiracy and negligence in not reporting church member Paul Adams for abusing his older daughter as early as 2010. And this negligence, the lawsuit argues, allowed him to continue abusing that girl for 7 years, and during which time he also abused her infant sister.
Wow.
It gets worse, because he's posted videos of himself sexually abusing his daughters on the internet, boasting of the abuse on social media, and confessing to federal law enforcement agents who arrested him with no help from the church. But they can't get him locked up because the court says that the church has this privilege and can't testify because they've got its clergy penitent privilege, apparently. So the only person who's incriminating him is himself. Curious law case.
And that is not sufficient?
Yeah, I mean, there's video and all that stuff.
You would have thought that would be an open and shut case without any additional documentation.
Right. If anything, the court of public opinion should at least look at this and see, here's a clear example of which side this religion's supporting or protecting. And hopefully that's a wake-up call to a lot of people.
Well,
But it's just another feather in a cap that's weighted down by feathers of like injustice brought on by religion.
To be honest, I don't know what's actually happened to him. But this case is being brought against the Mormon Church and its bishops and church members for negligence in not reporting. And that case has been the church's exemption has been supported in that case by the Arizona courts.
Yeah, Arizona's kind of gone off the deep end with the 2020 election, the 2016 election with Trump, and I mean, you know, I used to live there. I went to high school there. I have 2 college degrees from different schools there, and it was never that crazy. But the Republicans have kind of taken over the legislature, and the denial and everything is kind of running through there is just really sad.
Listen, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints agrees with the Arizona Supreme Court's decision.
Surprise, surprise.
There you go.
Yeah.
I don't want to dwell too much on this because I really do think child abuse is the most horrible crime that a person can commit, even above murder. I really do. But I would say this also. Anyone that's not in the interest of protecting children in this kind of regard is abominable. And on top of that, any like religious creed that would not only like who is the victim and who are you protecting when you come up with legislation like this? You're purposely supporting or protecting those who would potentially harm children. And to inhibit truth from coming out in that regard in the lawful case is I mean, there's no word for it. It's just inhumane, and I really despise it. I hope people can look at that and learn from it where their interests are from a philosophy that would support such a thing.
Unfortunately, an Associated Press investigation of this church privilege exemption shows that it exists in 33 states, and the Mormon Church, the Catholic Church, and Jehovah's Witnesses and other faiths have successfully lobbied against attempts to eliminate it.
Right. And I'm also going to throw out, who are those guys? Amish. The Amish are also on that list as well. For everyone that looks at them and says, what a quaint group of people just riding their horses and buggies, there is rife sexual misconduct in each one of those areas. And I never buy anything from an Amish place. I never go anywhere near an Amish place because I don't trust or respect or appreciate what they do behind their closed doors. And I think that should be something that, at least something we can support. Just like, hey, that's not cool.
Yeah. Well, a couple of weeks ago, maybe more, we interviewed an Amish girl on the Free Thought Hour show. And she was telling how they've all intermarried cousins, and many of them have genetic defects, including her. She's got health issues. It's very sad. Finally, I've got some good news. You'll like this. The US Supreme Court has extended a temporary block on limits to access of a popular abortion pill.
Good. Yeah.
Has extended a block? I'm sorry?
No, has blocked the limits to access. A Texas judge suspended approval of mifepristone, questioning its safety. And we know his real motives.
Right.
And that decision was upheld on appeal in Texas, but the Biden administration made an emergency request to the National Supreme Court, and they blocked it.
Yep, good.
They blocked the restriction on mifepristone.
Yeah, good.
They just booted it down the street. It's coming up this fall, probably with the Supreme Court. So Yeah, we'll see. 23 years that drug has been used in the United States, and their main claim is that it's unsafe.
Yeah.
What
do I have to do to get safe in their world? Yeah. So, guys, it's a little bit of good news to end up with, although it is only a temporary block, as John pointed out. Wonderful comments, as usual. I value your contributions. Thank you very much.
I do have one more item I thought just might be of some small interest.
Go ahead.
So I may have reported here that I had been working with the BC Ombudsman to address my issue with one of the ministries here who have refused to allow me to be photographed with my religious headgear. And I'd been looking forward to, them saying, well, based on that ministry's reluctance to be transparent about why exactly they were refusing or under what authority they were evaluating the veracity of my religion. The BC Ombudsman said, essentially came up with a conclusion, which was you shouldn't be photographed because you're not a religion, and then backpedaled and found reasons to justify the behavior of that ministry to do what it shouldn't have done, which caused me to make the complaint to the BC Ombudsman person in the first place.
Yeah.
So yes, so so these agencies that I've been trying to appeal to, which are the ones that are supposed to defend the rights of Canadians, have in every instance failed, and very obviously failed and arbitrarily failed. And it's I just thought I'd share that as a poor point in Canada.
We follow that story with interest. Thank you, Dred. Of course, they're not going to be able to come up with a definition that excludes your religion from all the other religions.
Oh, correct.
Of course.
More power to your elbow, I say. Guys, thank you very much. Say goodbye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Russell, was the Pope appealing for peace or was he praying for peace?
And the same applies to the carrying on.
Yeah, that's